Swift was broken up with over a 27-second phone call, Simmers in 2025 were basically broken up with using a 7-minute Sim Summit video. But after that underwhelming experience on Tuesday, it turned out that Lyndsay Pearson, the vice president, definitely had more to say on the Sims franchise as a whole. She actually sat down with PC Gamer and did an interview. I'm actually gonna link that interview down below if you want to go check it out yourselves. Big props to the hosts. They seem like really big Sims fans. They kind of were getting over their personal preferences and requests and hopes for the future of this franchise. Lyndsay also continued to talk about her hopes and want for the future of The Sims. I figured why not go through some of these main points, give my thoughts, feelings, my own personal requests, what I have seen people want in the community using my comments and Twitter and Blue Sky, because we all know that Simmers are more vocal than a cat in The Sims 4. Now, I am very thankful that she actually stated that the re-release of My Sims on Switch, which is soon coming to PC as well, has potentially opened doors for other spin-offs. I selfishly really want the spin-offs that I haven't played. So I haven't played much of Herbs just because when I was younger, I really didn't enjoy the console experience of Sims. I was very much like the sandbox player. I grew up playing Sims 1 and Sims 2. So when the spin-offs came out, I felt very restricted in my storytelling. I didn't really understand, because I was that little bit younger, of how to actually play those games. So they just didn't really interest me from the get-go. I vividly remember rage quitting Sims Castaway when I either couldn't make a fishing rod or I just couldn't catch fish, and I was like, no, I don't want this. I'm going back to The Sims. I never ever touched Bustin' Out, so I personally would love it if they brought back some of those old games. They remastered them, retouched them up, and they were released either on console or on PC. I think console actually maybe allows people to discover Sims more so than on PC. I feel like they keep talking about how do they create all these different experiences, all these different touch points of the Sims franchise. My Sims was on Switch. I firmly believe that the other ones that previously lived on other consoles such as the PlayStation could be also released on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, especially with the announcement of Switch 2. I really wouldn't be shocked if they've actually maybe potentially worked alongside Nintendo to be like, what can we bring back? What can hit these nostalgia points? Which spin-offs have people shown most interest in? And I would say My Sims was definitely up there. And I also think Herbs is significantly up there. And I think they are absolutely missing a trick if they don't bring out a refresh version of Herbs. Lyndsay also briefly spoke about the townie house refreshes now actually been updated. They've been rebuilt to use a bunch of features that weren't actually available in the Sims 4 base game. And interestingly enough, Lyndsay also mentioned over the past 10 years, they've actually been witnessing how people play and relate to those Sims. And the pancakes, for example, were a much bigger family than they ever thought they would be. When they introduced them, they didn't know that they were going to really become like a staple of Sims 4 lore and that players were going to latch on to those characters. So that's really cool to see. My only hope for this is that they actually carry on with the refreshes. I personally, above houses and above Create a Sim, would love the lore and the relationships to be updated, because right now Johnny Zest isn't even connected to the Landgrabs whatsoever, even though he is their abandoned child, especially now that we have way more features also in live mode. I mean, we have sentiments and people don't have sentiments towards one another, even though I personally do think sentiments as a system could be refreshed. I'm never going to shut up about it, but it should work like the Furious system in The Sims 2. It should have way more depth. You should be able to choose whether you want sentiments to degrade or not degrade, and they should have more of a consequence on your gameplay than they currently do. Imagine if Katrina Caliente found out that Dawn was potentially hitting on her daughters, if that's a storyline that you've kind of gone with in The Sims 4, even though the current situation doesn't even let you know particularly that Katrina and Don are in a relationship, because they have no romantic relationship. Other life simulations were mentioned by name. They actually called out both Paralives and Inzoi and said, you know what, these different life simulations are planning to come out this year. Got everything crossed that does in fact happen. And kind of how Sims has gone about the life simulation category in gaming for so long. Obviously, a life simulation is complex and there are many levels to it, even outside of like the community wants, but just like how the game actually functions, the like interpersonal relationships that Sims have with each other, with jobs, all of that is like all different levels of the game. But to sum it up, Lyndsay is basically excited that other life simulation games are coming out. She's excited to see what players gravitate to when it comes to the tools and the mechanics. Looking forward to the fact that these life simulations can kind of bounce off one another. So it actually sounds like Maxis is quite excited by the fact that they may finally have some competition. And I personally do think it is an exciting time for the life simulation genre. I think that each of these are still going to be individual. I think they're going to be unique. We see it in the art styles. I think we've personally already seen it in the different locations that they are focusing on, and also the like careers even, and how all these little pixelated people interact with each other. I for one am excited for those games. I'm excited to see how it all kind of fits, and I'm excited to play a new life simulation game and see if I personally play it differently, or kind of just going back to something that's completely new to me, because obviously Sims 4 has been out for 10 years now and I know it like the back of my hand. Having that surprise is going to be so nice in a life simulation, like not knowing every step that comes next. And I will say that is a downfall of The Sims 4 to me. I'm sick of not having consequences in The Sims 4, and it does feel like it's shifted slightly. We've had it more so recently with Growing Together and Love Struck with the dynamics and how Sims actually react to one another. But again, it's not as in-depth as I would personally want. I still don't feel like there's loads of negativity. The fact that a sim can break up with you is nice, but the fact that it gives you 3 warnings and then they don't actually go through an interaction, it's like, oh, it was so closely almost there, but it's just missing that little bit of realism and kind of the long flowing like problems and issues that could potentially arise in a romantic relationship. Sims 3 was mentioned a lot through this interview, and I know that people are potentially running away with the idea that Sims 3 could be getting a overhaul, because we did actually see that Sims 3 update the other day. I'm not taking that as fact. I'm not taking that as evidence that The Sims 3 is now being worked upon again. All that update did was allow newer PC builds to actually load up the game without having to go through a bunch of different loopholes, because they updated it for newer processors and I'm fairly sure also new graphics cards. I would love it if Sims 3 got some work thrown into it. I would love it if they maybe even just like made it look a little bit better or more optimized. It runs quite well on my PC right now, but if I actually have a save for like a long while, or I start getting into like deep generations, it does start to get particularly laggy and slow for me. But Lyndsay was more so talking about the distinction between The Sims 3 and The Sims 4, because PC Gamer actually mentioned, and this is definitely how I feel, Sims 3 gave you more of those like chances. It kind of played the game for you and was like, do you want to go along with this? Do you want to like steer away from this? Whereas, like I said, The Sims 4 needs an awful lot of imagination, and it needs you as the player directing the ship. You kind of need to have those storylines in mind. Every so often, I do feel like it can throw a spanner in the works and be like, oh, like maybe your sim has shifted from this personality to this personality. With midlife crisis, they can have like different interests, but it never really feels like The Sims 4 is playing you as a player or making decisions for you as a player. player. It feels like you have to have those all written out from the get-go, and you have to like follow this kind of list of things that you have to hit to get the game to kind of tell the story that you want to tell. Whereas I kind of preferred the Sims 3 sometimes taking control and being like, hey, we're gonna really throw a spanner in your works and we're gonna give you this. However, I actually don't think that The Sims 3 ever went too overboard with that, because I always felt like The Sims 3, you could always pull it back and be like, actually, that's not where I want to go. Like, I want to go in this direction. I just liked that The Sims 3 felt a little bit more alive behind the scenes. It felt like Sims were really their own like distinctive personalities. Whereas in The Sims 4, I feel like you can override everything far too easily and you can just get it to do what you want it to do. However, she did also mention that she thinks The Sims 3 and The Sims 4 can coexist because of those core differences, which right now it is currently doing. Like, there are a lot of people who play both The Sims 3 and The Sims 4. There are some people that only play Sims 2 and Sims 3 because they prefer it. There are people that only play The Sims 4. I play more Sims 4, obviously, because it is the current game and it's what new content is being released for, and I like to cover that new content for you lot. And I also like knowing the game inside out so that I can make videos like this and know how it feels as a player. And then sometimes I'll throw in Sims 3, I'll throw in Sims 2 here or there. I don't put as many hours into those games as I wish I personally could, which could potentially be hopeful that maybe Sims 3 is gonna get a little bit more attention because it was mentioned so frequently, but I am not gonna sit here and get anyone's hopes up. I don't know if they will ever release like a remaster or refresh it in any type of way, and I don't think I want to build those hopes up because I know how much people love The Sims 3, and I don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, this is happening, or even be like, this is a potential, because then if it doesn't happen, I know people are going to be so upset about it. I think take that with a pinch of salt. It just kind of sounds to me that Lyndsay respects people playing past Sims games as much as she respects people who play Sims 4, which is a given because, you know, she's worked on The Sims since The Sims on Holiday. She has been a producer, a developer on so many of those games, and she is still as proud of her work now as she was then. However, there was an interesting point made by her, and I think this kind of goes alongside the wanting different touch points and like different experiences of the Sims franchise in like a bunch of different ways, be it mobile, their actual main game line like Sims 3 and Sims 4, spin-offs like My Sims or Herbs, that those other experiences, if they get players filtering into their mainline game and their current mainline game, which is obviously Sims 4 right now, they actually want players to feel like they know how they can experience all that past content of the last 10 years, and kind of gave a reason why we as Simmers, I feel, who have been playing The Sims 4 for 10 years, have constantly been saying whenever a new pack comes out, the aspirations don't really feel like life aspirations. And that is because Lyndsay actually called out that the ambitions, and I think she meant aspirations when she said that, but the ambitions that a sim can have can kind of guide you through the gameplay of packs, which is something I know that I have personally complained about. I wish that if they were going to do that, they would also add like either a secondary aspiration, and potentially that could have been what the Soul's Journey in Life and Death was meant to be. I have my own beef with Soul's Journey. I've spoken so much about how I think it's so overpowered. Before you've even made a bucket list or try to like do any of those goals, sometimes before a bucket list even spawns, if you don't actually have your sim go out and like make their own, you will have completed your life journey, which is a problem to me because your Soul's Journey, it has overpowered things in it. And also they said that this should be like a life aspiration. The fact that I was able to complete that in about 3 in-game days, only using New Year's resolutions that we got with The Sims 4 Seasons, is a problem. That is not a soul's journey. That is not a life journey. That is not something that you can take your time on completing. That needs to be weighted. It definitely needs to be looked at. If they're gonna use the aspirations as tutorials, why don't you give us a secondary or a third aspiration also in the pack that actually lets players who are more experienced and who do want a deeper look at the content and want harder goals, why not just create something for us as well? Like, I am very much for introducing new players into the game, making them feel comfortable. I do think there are maybe a little too many tutorials in The Sims 4 right now, but I'm always here to encourage new players to get into any Sims games. Like, I personally love Sims games, and I feel like so many people can connect with this game, but I don't think that should be done at the detriment of your core players who have been playing for 10 years and who do know how the game works and kind of don't want to have those introductory, like, oh, you can go and explore a graveyard and there you go, you've completed a goal, congratulations, because that to me isn't gameplay. That isn't your core mechanics. Right now, it does just feel like The Sims 4 is catering to newer or younger players, more so it is than the core. Outside of obviously like surveys that we can do that give feedback on like themes that we want to see, and actually seeing those themes that kind of come to life. I do feel like they currently have their finger on the pulse of the community when it comes to themes. I, however, right now don't feel like a lot of our concerns about how the game is actually playing and how we play the game are currently being adjusted or like looked into. And I really, really hope that in the future they can be. We've started getting laundry lists. We've seen that bug fixes are happening. Lyndsay talked about the transparency and how communication is always evolving because it's kind of a balance of, well, we're working on this thing, but it might not potentially like make it into the game, so therefore we don't want to build up false hope over this is going to make it into the game, so let's give them like information about this. I do feel like the transparency wasn't great on the Sim Summit. Sometimes they don't strike the balance between like business talk and like marketing talk, and sometimes they change and swap around different names for different things, and I wish that there was just some consistency in that when it came from our perspective of trying to understand like what is actually happening to the future of this game franchise. Interestingly enough though, on those two topics, it does feel like they're trying to open communication on overhauls and how they can actually go about fixing pieces in The Sims 4 that need overhauls. Something that I was so excited for that I'm definitely going to have a video on because I have so many thoughts about it now that it has been mentioned. But Lyndsay was actually talking about going in, looking at The Sims 4, seeing what currently works and what doesn't work and what feels like a little bit lackluster. Again, kind of a knock-on effect of those townie refreshes and house refreshes of what core systems have we added into the game, what's maybe not working so well now that we've like built upon it, what needs more depth. She called out by name skills and how skills could definitely be updated, they could be looked into. Maybe they've changed a lot since when base game was a thing, so they want to add more depth to that. They can rework them, they can revisit core pieces and refresh them, and there's lots of opportunity in refreshes. Now, when pack refreshes were mentioned, there was no word. Lips were sealed. I feel like EA are keeping that very close to their chest. I've personally said I don't believe that we're going to get any further pack refreshes, which is so disappointing because I have spoken about this before. I loved Spa Day before the refresh. I love Spa Day after the refresh. Do I think it was the pack that needed the biggest refresh? Absolutely not. I think there could have been so much more potential, even in the realm of game packs, if they specifically wanted to focus on a game pack that could have had a refresh that honestly would have made much more of an impact in the community over Spa Day. But maybe they chose Spa Day because it didn't perform that great at first and they were wanting to see if it performed better after. I just don't think it was the strongest choice, and unfortunately I don't think we're getting any other pack refreshes. But now I am hopeful that they could go back and look at systems and skills and jobs and see how they can actually overhaul those and refresh those to make them more interesting. Obviously, the one that comes to mind is like either introducing a woodworking skill and giving us more stuff to work on woodworking and then splitting that up from handiness. I feel like potentially that could be coming because in the Life and Death trailer, there was actually a woodworking table in the back that had like kind of just debug wood on it. It wasn't anything new from what I can see. In the artist kit, we got a new woodworking table. So I'm like, maybe after all these years of begging for it, we could potentially get some new items that you can create on the woodworking table. I would love for it to become its own skill. I would love to be able to make toys, wedding archers, baby cribs. There's a whole ton of things, especially now that we have heirlooms in Life and Death, that I personally have such an attachment to in my Sim save files, that I think if my Sim could create it, it would be even cuter. And honestly, I just want that because I love a rags to riches, eco lifestyle, cottage living, two of my favorite packs, tied in with woodworking, being able to practically make a house over furniture you find or build. Incredible for me, yes. And that's why I'll always go so hard on woodworking needing an upgrade. But I would love to hear your opinions on what like core systems or features or skills or jobs or anything you think could be added. And I also think that they could just add like different base game careers for free in an update. Like maybe they could give us a firefighter career. I just love the firefighter career in Sims 3 Ambitions and I miss it. I want it so desperately. There's definitely core jobs, you know, that make the world turn that aren't included in the game. And sometimes I would like those. Don't always want to become like a super spy international villain. Sometimes I just want to work in my local shop. All in all, this does make me more hopeful, and I honestly just kind of like this stuff because I think it gives us as simmers, people who play this game day in, day out, or who take a break from it and then come back to it and know this game, I think it kind of gives us an opportunity to give our feedback. And I always think that that constructive criticism and that feedback is so important for the development of this game. I know a lot of people are wanting to see bigger bug fixes and also just like the core experience, the core code of The Sims 4 to be updated, rejuvenated, solidified, and also just make for a better experience to then continue building upon for many more years, as they have said. And I think the refreshes and reworking could be the potential signs of that. But I would love to hear all of your thoughts about this interview down below. Let me know how you feel about this. I will also leave the interview down below so you can go check it out if you want to hear it all in Lyndsay's own words. I would highly encourage you to go do that because I've kind of paraphrased bits here or there. I kind of picked out the highlights for me personally. It was about, I think, a half an hour interview, so not too long, but I appreciate you all for tuning in and honestly just listening to me ramble. I fear there's going to be a few videos that are going to be like this in the next coming weeks. There is going to be a lot of talk about the news, the Motherload season, all of that, so I am going to be in my thoughts and feelings. So I hope you're ready for those deep dives. I appreciate you all so much, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.